After I get diagnosed with clinical depression, my entire family starts doing everything in their power to protect me. Every sharp item in the house is hidden away. Even the windows have been welded shut. Mom and Dad take turns keeping an eye on me at all times. They're afraid I might try to take my own life. And to protect my emotional well-being, they even force my older sister, Jessica Stewart, to come home and help out, even though she has just gotten into one of the best universities in the country. On the day Jessica gets married, the house is decorated for a cozy wedding reception. All of the guests show up in good spirits, but the crowd starts making me feel like I can't breathe. So I say to Mom, I don't feel too good. I want to go back to my room. The beaming smile on Mom's face is immediately replaced with a nasty scowl. She grabs a fruit knife from the nearby platter and stuffs it into my hands, snarling, "You don't feel too good, huh? Then just die, why don't you? It's Jessica's big day today. Must you ruin things for her? Go ahead and cut yourself here. Don't just keep claiming that you don't want to live anymore." She grips my hand and shoves the knife toward my throat, before pushing me away in disgust. She whips right around to bring Ian Lowry, my new brother-in-law, another drink. Staring at the knife in my hand, I smile at last. The cold from the metal seeped into my palm. It had been 3 years since I'd last touched something this sharp. It's been far too long. For the past 3 years, the only things allowed to appear in my world had blunt, rounded edges. I could only eat with a soft plastic spoon. Whenever my fingernails grew out, Mom would personally use a nail file to grind them down. Even when I showered, the bathroom door had to remain open, so they could check on me at any moment and make sure I was safe. But Mom had just stuffed a knife right into my hand. The guests, bright laughter and cheerful conversation filled the house. I could hear them offering toasts and well wishes. I looked down at the knife. I should put it back. Put it back on the fruit platter, and pretend none of this had ever happened. My hand lifted a little before hanging in the air. I heard Jessica Stewart, my older sister, laughing happily in the living room. She was going around chatting with the guests, looking positively radiant. She'd already had to take time off school to look after me, her mentally ill brother. She'd missed out on the best years of her youth. Now that she was getting married and starting a family of her own, she could finally be free of the burden that I'd become. Mom was right. I shouldn't be having a depressive episode. Today of all days. I shouldn't be ruining things for Jess. I shouldn't even be alive. Tightening my grip on the handle, I went back to my bedroom. I moved through the house, slowly. No one noticed me. Once I got back to my room, I gently closed the door, cutting off the noise outside. I leaned against the padded wall. Slowly, my body slid down until I collapsed onto the rug. I raised the knife and held it against my neck. My hand trembled violently. "Jonathan Stewart, we've sacrificed everything for you. Your life doesn't belong to you alone. It belongs to the entire family. How can you be so selfish?" That day, I would finally be free. I heard the voice in my head.
"Mom,
"You're the one who wants me to die. You gave me the knife yourself."
so I'll do as you say."
The sharp blade pressed against my skin, and my wrist thrust forward forcefully. Warm liquid immediately gushed out. My strength drained out with the blood. I lay collapsed on the floor, curling into a ball. It was so cold.
So this was what death felt like.
This was my wedding gift to Jess. I was honoring her wedding with my life. I was using my life to repay Mom and Dad for bringing me into this world and raising me too. From now on, they didn't have to take turns keeping an eye on me. They wouldn't have to live in constant anxiety, feeling too embarrassed to talk about me in front of our other relatives. It would no longer be strained by the crushing weight of my treatment expenses. My family was free now, and so was I. My consciousness began to fade. The bright voices and cheery laughter beyond the door sounded distant and indistinct. It was so lively out there. The very end, I thought I heard Mom laughing. It was an expression of genuine joy, the kind I hadn't heard from her in a very long time. I was dead, and yet somehow I wasn't completely gone yet. I felt weightless, suspended in midair. I wanted to crouch and wipe away the blood, but my hand passed straight through the rug. I couldn't grasp anything. Dad's voice came from the living room, filled with unmistakable delight. "Today has been such a wonderful day. Everyone congratulated us on having such a handsome son-in-law as Ian. He is certainly a blessing to the family." Mom's voice was slightly hoarse, but her excitement was palpable, too. Of course. Why would we settle for anything less? Anyway, enough of that. Most of the guests gave a cash gift instead of a present. We should tally up the numbers and keep a record of it. I drifted out of my bedroom and into the living room. There were still empty wine glasses and plates here and there. A few stacks of money had been piled up on the coffee table.
Mom, Dad, Jess.
And my brother-in-law, Ian Lowry, were sitting together on the couch, all four of them wearing tired but contented smiles.
Where's John?
Ian abruptly started looking around. I didn't see him just now when we were making the rounds. Is he in his room? The atmosphere tensed. The smile on Mom's face stiffened, and she snorted coldly.
Don't bother about him.
He's throwing a tantrum in his room. He just had to go and ruin things for us on a day like this. Even used a knife to threaten me just now, saying he didn't want to live anymore. He had a knife? Ian cried out in alarm. I thought there weren't any in the house. Well, I gave it to him. Mom slammed down a stack of money onto the table. I was fed up. He keeps threatening us every day by saying he wants to kill himself. So I gave him the knife to see if he'd actually do it. And what happened, huh? He just scurried back to his room to hide instead. Mom, we should still check on him. Ian was concerned. He stood up and glanced at my room. John hasn't been doing too well these last few years. What if? What could possibly happen? Mom cut him off and grabbed his arm to stop him, her tone harsh. You just joined the family, Ian, so you have no idea what he's like.
He's only acting like this
because we've indulged him too much. He's just an attention seeker. And the more attention you give him, the worse he gets. Listen to me and just ignore him. John's just too selfish. All he ever thinks about is how miserable he feels. He never considers the rest of the family. It's Jess's wedding day today. And on such a joyous occasion, he just had to go and ruin it for the rest of the family. We haven't had a day of peace in the last few years because of him. This time, we should let him stew in his room and reflect on himself for once. I turned to Jess. He was clutching a stack of money as well, her expression dark and unreadable. Her eyes flitted toward my bedroom door. It was shut, her lips parted, but in the end, she simply lowered her head and went back to counting the money. That's true. It's really time for John to fix that attitude of his. Dining table was filled with leftovers from the wedding reception. I saw pork ribs, chicken wings, shrimp, and even half of the two-tier wedding cake. I'd almost forgotten what meat tasted like. Hovering over the dining table, I greedily breathed in the aroma of the pork ribs.
I'll fix a plate of food for John. He hasn't eaten all day.
Ian couldn't bring himself to be so heartless. Mom abruptly marched over and snatched the plate from his hands. With a loud clatter, everything, the plate and the food, went straight into the nearby trash can. Don't give him anything to eat, Mom shouted furiously, her chest heaving. I'm making this clear right here.
Right now.
Nobody's allowed to bring him any food. Let him starve for 3 days. And see how much energy he has left to pull this crap. I'm doing this for his own good. Mom pointed toward my bedroom door and shouted, if we don't teach him a lesson, he'll never understand how much this family has sacrificed for him. He's just spoiled rotten. He thinks the whole world owes him something. What if he's sick? So, what if he has depression? Does he think everyone else has an easy life? Ian, I promise I'm not a bad person. I really am just at the end of my rope. Don't know what these past few years have been like for me. I haven't had a good night's sleep in ages. Even when I'm in the bathroom, I have to keep my ears out for any unusual sounds. One minute he's threatening to jump out the window, and the next he's claiming he'll bash his head against the wall. My nerves have been stretched so thin that it feels like I'm going to snap at any given moment, and listened in silence before pouring Mom a glass of water.
I get it, Mom.
It's not easy to look after someone with a condition. But I saw the look in John's eyes today. It felt like genuine despair. It didn't look like someone who's just putting on a show for attention. Despair, huh? When is John ever not in despair? Ever since he got sick. It's like he became a completely different person. He used to be such a good boy. He was smart and handsome. If he hadn't gotten sick, he'd probably be getting married, too. I wanted to tell her.
I'm sorry, Mom.
It's all my fault. I shouldn't have gotten sick. Shouldn't have gone from being your wonderful son to a useless burden who caused nothing but trouble for the family. Mom was alone in the living room. She turned off the television, gathered up the rash, and headed back to the bedroom. When she passed my bedroom door, she stopped and stood there for a long time before suddenly speaking. John, I spoke a little harshly just now. My anger just got the better of me. You know what day it is? It was Jess's wedding reception, and we had all those guests around, yet you insisted on causing a scene. How else was I supposed to save myself from further embarrassment? Don't blame me for being harsh on you, John. I only made you go hungry so that you'll learn your lesson.
I'll
take you shopping for new clothes tomorrow, okay? I saw a white shirt at the mall the other day. I'm sure you'll look handsome in it. As long as you behave yourself and stop trying to kill yourself, I'll give you whatever you want, Mom declared. I nodded frantically. wanting to throw my arms around her and tell her, I'll behave myself.
Mom.
I won't do it anymore. I'll never make you angry again. Mom, please don't be sad. Shaking her head, she pulled a small box of chocolates from her pocket and placed it on the floor outside my door. The family had bought the most expensive brand they could afford to give them out as wedding favors. She'd saved some. If you're hungry, have some chocolate to tide you over. Don't actually starve yourself. I'll make you some pancakes in the morning. Drifting over, I saw Dad and Mom sitting up in bed. Spread out between them was the ledger, where they had recorded the cash gifts from the wedding, along with the calculator. After tabulating the figures, he removed his glasses and rubbed his forehead. And after minus some of the additional wedding expenses we couldn't cover with our savings, there should be about $20,000 left. 20,000? Mom sighed. It sounds like a lot, but it's barely enough to cover our expenses. That new imported drug John is using costs $1,000 per bottle, and his sessions with the psychiatrist cost $500 an hour. $20,000 won't even be enough to cover 1 year's worth of his treatment expenses. Dad sighed heavily as well. When do you think this is ever going to end? Just got married, and the couple doesn't have a place of their own yet. We can't just expect them to keep staying with us, either. Ian did put up $30,000 toward the family's expenses. If we didn't have to throw money down a bottomless pit for John's sake, we'd have $50,000 to use as a down payment to get Jesse and I in a marital home. That's enough. Mom suddenly glared at Dad, her voice turning sharp. Why are you saying such depressing things first thing in the morning? John didn't choose to get sick. He's our son. As long as I'm alive, I can't just abandon him. The two leaned against each other, and in the pale light of dawn, there was a quiet tenderness between them, the kind that formed when two people had spent their lives weathering hardship together. I wanted to help massage Mom's lower back, too, but my palm passed straight through her body, stirring only the faintest current of air. So I simply wrapped my arms around her from behind and rested my head against her frail shoulders.
Dad. Mom.
Things will be easier for you now. Use the money to buy a house for Jess. Important medication. I won't take it anymore. Therapy doesn't help anyway. I won't go anymore. I also saved up some money for you guys. I saved up as much as I could. Soon the sun was up. Mom got out of bed and went to make the pancakes she had promised me the night before. Once breakfast was ready, she took off her apron and came over to my bedroom door. Come on, come out for breakfast. And what's with you? Why didn't you eat the chocolate I left for you? Oh, whatever. If you don't want it, it's not a big deal. Just wash up and come out for breakfast. But the room was silent. The plate of warm banana pancakes in Mom's hand sent sweet steam swirling into the cool morning air. She was still wearing the yellow floral apron Dad had bought her for their anniversary 5 years ago, the hem slightly frayed at the pockets. On the floor beside her slipper lay the little gold foil box of imported Belgian chocolates, the wedding favor she had left the night before, completely untouched. She frowned, the sharp line between her eyebrows deepening. John. She tapped the flat of her palm against the white wood. The sound was dull, absorbed by the heavy insulation they had installed 2 winters ago, so his middle-of-the-night panic attacks wouldn't wake the neighbors. Jonathan, stop being childish. I'm not in the mood for games today. Ian and Jess are waking up soon, and we have to drop off the extra chairs at the rental company before noon. No answer. Only the gentle hum of the refrigerator down the hall. I stood beside her, my phantom feet hovering an inch above the linoleum. I looked at the side of her face, the crow's feet around her eyes, the gray hairs escaping her messy bun, the tightness around her mouth that had never truly relaxed since the autumn I turned 19. Mom, I wanted to say, reaching out to touch the fabric of her apron. Don't open it. Just go eat the pancakes with Dad. John. Mom's voice took on that familiar, brittle edge, the tone she used when her patience had worn down to raw nerves. I know you're awake. Don't think playing the silent treatment is going to make me feel guilty. You ruined enough yesterday. Now unlock the door. She jiggled the brass handle, locked from the inside. A flash of irritation crossed her face, quickly chased by a shadow of reflexive panic. It was the same shadow I had seen 1,000 times, the instinctive terror of a mother who had spent 3 years listening for the sound of shattering glass or a body hitting the floor. Arthur, she yelled toward the kitchen. Arthur, where is the master key for
John's door?
Dad shuffled down the hallway in his plaid pajama pants, a half-folded newspaper under his arm and his reading glasses hanging around his neck by a cheap lanyard. Isn't it on the key rack by the microwave?
No, I checked.
You must have taken it after you checked his room on Friday. Mom shoved the plate of pancakes into Dad's hands, syrup sloshing over the porcelain rim. Go find it.
Quick.
Helen, calm down, Dad muttered, though his footsteps quickened. He's probably just sulking with his headphones on. You know how he gets after an episode. He'll sleep for 14 hours straight if we let him. Just find the key. Her voice cracked slightly. Behind them, the guest room door clicked open. Jessica stepped out, yawning, her dark hair tangled from sleep, wrapped in an oversized fleece robe Ian had given her for Christmas. Ian followed behind her, already dressed in jeans and an ironed polo shirt, looking every bit the dutiful new son-in-law trying to make a good impression. What's going on? Jess asked, rubbing her eyes. Why are you two shouting so early? Your brother locked his door, Mom said, her hands trembling slightly as she rummaged through the drawer of the hallway console table, tossing aside old batteries, rubber bands, and expired receipts. He knows the rule. He's never allowed to lock this door. I told you yesterday, he wasn't looking right, Ian said quietly, stepping forward. Let me try. John? It's Ian. Can you open up, man? We just want to make sure you're all right. Silence. Thick, heavy, and motionless. Found it. Dad jogged back down the hall, holding a small silver key with blue tape wrapped around the head. Mom snatched it from his fingers before he could even line it up with the keyhole. Let me do it. I drifted backward into the bedroom, settling near the ceiling above the window. The welded steel bars cast crisscross shadows across the carpet in the morning sunlight. Down below, on the plush gray rug I had chosen for my 17th birthday, lay my body. The blood had long stopped flowing. It had pooled beneath my neck and chest, soaking deep into the synthetic fibers, turning the pale gray wool into a stiff, blackened crust. My skin had taken on the dull, translucent hue of candle wax. My eyes were half open, fixed blankly on the baseboard. In my right hand, stiffened into a rigid claw, was the small serrated fruit knife with the yellow plastic handle. Click. The lock turned. Mom pushed the door open with a sharp huff, ready to launch into a lecture. Jonathan Stewart, if you think. The words didn't just stop, they seemed to turn to ash in her throat. The plate in Dad's hand hit the hardwood floor of the hallway first. Porcelain, shattered with a sharp, violent crack, sending hot pancakes and sticky syrup sliding across the floorboards. A strange, wet gasp tore out of Mom's chest, a sound not quite human, like an animal caught in a snare. John, she whispered. She didn't run. She stumbled forward, her knees buckling instantly, her hands catching the doorframe to keep from falling before she dragged herself toward the rug. John? Baby. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The metallic stench of dried blood hit them all at once, heavy, sweet, and suffocating. No, 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 no. Dad was repeating a frantic, rhythmic chant as he dropped to his knees beside Mom. He grabbed my shoulders, trying to lift me, but rigor mortis had already set in. My torso moved as a solid, unyielding weight. Arthur, call an ambulance. Call 911. Helen, don't touch him. Call 911.
John.
John, look at Mom. Mom was frantic, her hands hovering over the gaping wound on my neck, terrified to touch it, yet unable to pull away. She tried to press her apron against the gash, but the blood was dry and tacky. It only smeared dark crimson across the bright yellow fabric. Wake up. Stop playing. Arthur. Why is he so cold? Why is he so stiff? Put the heater on. Why did you leave the window open? The window is welded, Helen. Dad screamed, tears instantly flooding his eyes, blinding him as he fumbled in his pocket for his phone, dropping it twice onto the bloody carpet. God, please, operator. We need an ambulance. 442 Elm Street. My son cut himself. There's so much blood. Please hurry. Jessica stood frozen in the doorway. Her hands remained suspended in the air, right where they had been when she was tying the sash of her robe. Her face had drained of every drop of color. Her eyes darted from my pale, lifeless face down to the yellow-handled fruit knife, still gripped in my fingers. Her lips parted. A trembling breath escaped her. The knife, she whispered, her voice barely audible over Dad's hysterical shouting into the phone. Ian pushed past her, rushing into the room. He knelt beside Dad, his fingers searching for a pulse at my wrist, then at the carotid artery on the uninjured side of my neck. He pressed hard, his knuckles turning white, his jaw set in a
desperate, clenched line.
After 5 agonizing seconds, Ian slowly let go. He looked up at Dad, then at Mom, his eyes wide with horror and sorrow. "He's gone," Ian said softly, his voice cracking. "Helen, he's been gone for hours." "Shut up," Mom shrieked, swinging her arm and striking Ian across the chest with her fist. "Shut up. You don't know anything. You just met him."
John.
"Johnny, open your eyes. Mommy made you pancakes. Look, I brought you the chocolate." She scrambled back toward the doorway on her hands and knees, grabbing the small box of wedding chocolates from the floor, ripping the gold foil with her teeth, and thrusting a piece toward my cold, parted lips. "Eat it, baby. Look, it's the good kind. The expensive kind Jess bought. Just eat one bite and talk to Mom."
Please.
"Please, Johnny."
I'm sorry.
"I'm sorry." Dad grabbed her from behind, wrapping his arms around her waist, pulling her back as she thrashed and wailed against his chest. "Helen, stop. Helen, he's
Dead.
He's gone. Oh God, our boy is gone." From above, I floated down, resting my translucent hands over Mom's trembling shoulders, leaning my cheek against hers. She couldn't feel me. She could only feel the cold reality of the room, the scent of iron and shattered porcelain, and the crushing weight of a silence that would never, ever be broken again. The sirens came 10 minutes later, their red and blue lights painting frantic ribbons of color across the ceiling through the welded grates of my window. 2 paramedics entered first with heavy trauma bags, followed closely by 2 uniformed police officers. The paramedics took one look at my body, checked the core temperature, noted the lividity pooling along my back and thighs, and quietly stepped back, pulling a dark blue sheet over my face. Time of death was likely late yesterday afternoon or early evening, one paramedic muttered to the lead officer, a tired-looking man named Detective Miller with thinning gray hair and a notepad in hand. "Severe laceration to the right carotid. Exsanguination occurred within minutes. There was nothing anyone could have done by the time the door was opened. Late yesterday afternoon." The words fell like lead weights into the living room where the family had been
Moved.
Jessica was sitting on the sofa, her hands clasped tightly between her knees, staring at the floor where the spilled syrup from the pancakes had dried into a sticky, amber smudge. Late yesterday afternoon. That was when the wedding guests were still clinking champagne glasses. That was when Dad was bragging to Uncle Robert about Ian's salary at the engineering firm. That was when Mom had taken the stage in the backyard to toast Jessica's bright, unburdened future. And all the while, 50 feet away, behind a soundproofed door, I was bleeding out on the rug. Detective Miller stood in the center of the living room, flipping through his notebook. "Mr. and Mrs. Stewart, I know this is an unimaginable nightmare, but I have to ask a few standard protocol questions.
Was Jonathan under psychiatric
care?" "Yes," Dad choked out, his voice raw from sobbing. He sat on the arm of the sofa, his hand resting on Mom's slumped shoulder. "Major depressive disorder. Severe anxiety, with suicidal ideation. He's been in treatment for 3 years. Dr. Morrison at the county clinic." "And the sharp objects in the home?" Miller asked gently, glancing around the living room, taking note of the childproof locks on the cabinets and the lack of glass decor. "I noticed the safety measures. You clearly went to great lengths to secure the house." "We locked everything away," Dad said, wiping his nose with a crumpled tissue. "All the cutlery, all the scissors, razor blades, even the mirrors in his bathroom were acrylic. We didn't keep a single sharp edge within his reach." "Then where did he get the serrated fruit knife?" Detective Miller asked. The living room fell into a terrifying, vacuum-like silence. Mom's head jerked up. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face streaked with mascara and gray dust from the floor. Her breath caught in her throat. Ian looked at Mom. His expression wasn't angry. It was something far worse. It was hollowed out by disbelief and moral horror. "Helen." Dad turned to look down at her, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Helen, you locked the kitchen drawer after the caterers left on Friday, didn't you? You had the key." Mom's lower lip began to tremble violently. She looked at Dad, then at Jessica, then down at her lap, where her blood-smeared fingers twisted the fabric of her apron into tight knots. Mom's voice was a dry croak. "Mom?" Jessica looked up, her voice trembling. "What is it?" Ian stood up from the armchair. He didn't raise his voice, but the weight of his words shattered whatever remained of the family's fragile sanity. "Yesterday," Ian said, his gaze fixed steadily on the floor between them. During the reception, John came out and told Helen he wasn't feeling well.
He
Wanted to go to his room. Detective Miller's pen stopped moving across the paper. He looked up at Ian.
Go.
On, son. Ian, don't. Mom pleaded in a raspy whisper, reaching out a trembling hand.
Toward him.
Ian, please. Helen took the fruit knife from the dessert table. Ian continued, his voice shaking with a terrible, unvarnished honesty. She gave it to him. She told him that if he was going to ruin Jess's wedding, he should just go ahead and do it. Dad froze. The color completely drained from his face, leaving behind an ashen, grayish pallor. He stared at his wife of 26 years as if looking at a stranger wearing her skin. Helen. Dad whispered. What is he talking about? I didn't mean it. Mom suddenly shrieked, dropping from the sofa onto her knees, grabbing Dad's legs, burying her face into his trousers. Arthur, I
Didn't mean it.
You know how he gets. He always threatened us. Every month, every week, he would say he didn't want to live, that he was going to hurt himself. I was so tired. I was so embarrassed in front of the guests. I just wanted him to stop using it to control us. You gave him a knife? Dad's voice didn't rise. It dropped into an abyss of
Pure, suffocating horror.
He pulled his legs back from her grasp, stumbling backward until his spine hit the wall. You put a blade into his hand? While he was having an episode? I thought he was bluffing. Mom wept, clawing at the carpet, her forehead pressing against the wood. I swear to God, Arthur, I thought he was just trying to steal the attention from Jess. I thought he would hold it, get scared, and put it away. I didn't know. You told him to die, Jessica whispered. Jess rose from the couch slowly, as if her limbs were made of glass. She looked down at her mother, kneeling on the floor. Jessie, baby, please. Mom sobbed, reaching for her daughter's hem. I did it. For you. I wanted you to have one day. Just one day, where everything was about you. You gave up your spot at Columbia for him. You gave up your entire 20s. To change his sheets and watch him breathe while he slept. I couldn't let him ruin your wedding day. I did it for you. Don't you dare. Jessica hissed, a terrifying, venomous sound. Don't you dare. Put his blood on my wedding dress, mother. Jessica turned on her heel and walked into the bathroom, slamming the door shut. A second later, the sound of violent retching echoed through the thin drywall. Detective Miller sighed heavily, a look of profound, weary sadness settling into the creases of his face. He closed his notebook with a dull snap. Technically, Miller said quietly, she didn't commit a homicide. Under state law, handing an object in a moment of domestic dispute without physical force doesn't meet the threshold for second-degree murder, though the district attorney may look into reckless endangerment or assisted suicide depending on the psychiatric history. But right now, we need to let the coroner do their work. Two men in black uniforms carried a heavy, zipped vinyl bag out of my bedroom. I followed them down the hallway. I watched as they wheeled the gurney past the living room, past Dad, who was slumped against the wall with his hands covering his eyes, past Mom, who remained curled into a ball on the floor, whispering my name into the dust. As the gurney passed through the front door into the brilliant morning sunlight, I looked back one last time at the home where I had spent 22 years. The front door closed with a soft, final click. The days that followed were draped in a suffocating, heavy twilight. The house smelled of commercial disinfectant and bleach. Dad had spent 6 hours on his hands and knees in my room with a bucket of soapy water and stiff bristle brushes, trying to scrub the dark brown stain out of the gray carpet. But blood is stubborn. It sinks into the padding, into the subfloor, into the wood grain
Beneath.
In the end, the stain remained, a pale, yellowish-brown silhouette of where my body had rested, shaped like an unborn child curled inside a womb. Relatives called, of course. Aunt Sarah, Uncle Robert, cousins from out of
State.
Mom didn't answer the phone. She hadn't changed out of her clothes for 3
Days.
She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair where I used to sit, her hands folded in her lap. Whenever Dad tried to speak to her, she didn't respond. She was like a clock, whose gears had stripped clean. The hand still moved, but the mechanism inside was entirely dead. On the 4th morning, 2 days before the private memorial service, Jessica and Ian came over to help sort through my room. Jessica looked 10 years older. The bridal glow that had illuminated her face just days ago had vanished, replaced by dark violet rings under hollow eyes.
She
carried 3 large cardboard moving boxes into my bedroom. "We need to pack his clothes for the donation center," Jess said flatly, her voice devoid of inflection.
Dr.
Morrison said, leaving the room exactly as it was will only prolong Mom's catatonia. Ian nodded quietly. He stepped into the room, his eyes carefully avoiding the outline on the floor, and began opening my closet. He didn't have many clothes, Ian observed softly, pulling down 3 identical gray sweatshirts, 4 pairs of sweatpants, and 2 plain t-shirts. "Where are all his other things?" "He threw them out 2 years ago," Jessica said, taping the bottom of a cardboard box with aggressive, screeching pulls of packing tape. "When the depression got really bad, he told Mom that having nice clothes made him feel like a fraud because he had nowhere to go. He just wanted to wear whatever made him blend into the walls." She reached up to the top shelf of my closet to pull down an old shoebox. As she dragged it forward, her fingers caught on a loose piece of wood behind the shelf. Trim. A small, rectangular metal box slid out, clattering onto the floorboards. "What's that?" Ian asked, pausing with a stack of folded shirts. Jessica knelt down and picked it up. It was an old tin that had once held peppermint tea, its edges worn down to the silver tin plate. She opened the lid. Inside lay 3 neatly folded items: a bank deposit book, a small blue notebook, and a stack of crisp, banded $20 bills. Jess's breath hitched. She opened the bank book first. The account had been opened 4 years ago, right before I dropped out of community college. The initial deposit was $40, but over the last 48 months, there were dozens of tiny, painstaking entries. Plus 12.50, online survey transcription, asterisk. Asterisk plus 15.00, used textbook sale. Plus 5.00, birthday cash from grandma. Asterisk. Asterisk plus 20.00, sold old guitar pedals. Plus $8.00, data entry microtask. Month after month, dollar by dollar, without missing a single week. At the bottom of the final page, dated 3 days before Jessica's wedding, the total balance was stamped in faded purple ink. $7,420. Tucked beneath the cash was a small envelope addressed in my shaky, unpracticed handwriting, for Jess's new house and Mom's back surgery. Jessica let out a choked, ragged sound. She dropped the bank book and covered her mouth, her shoulders trembling violently.
"Jess."
Ian knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her trembling frame. "Jessie, look at me." He was saving, she sobbed, tears spilling over her knuckles, hot and fast. Ian, he couldn't leave the house. He was trapped in this room for 3 years, with welded windows, doing 50-cent surveys on a broken laptop, to save $7,000. She pulled out the blue notebook. On the first page, written in my neatest script from when my hands didn't shake, so much was a letter. Jessica began to read aloud, her voice breaking on every 3rd word. "To my family, if you are reading this, it means the weight finally became too heavy, and I am so sorry for dropping it on your feet. Mom, I know you think I wasn't trying. I know you thought every bad day was a choice, a tantrum, or a way to steal the light from Jess. I swear to you on my soul, Mom, I fought. Every morning when you opened my door, with that soft plastic spoon, I tried to swallow the food. Every time you filed down my nails, so I wouldn't hurt myself, I felt so much shame that I wanted the floor to open up and take me. You gave up your life to be my warden. You stopped going to book club. You stopped laughing with Dad on the porch. You aged 20 years in 3 years, and every gray hair on your head was put there by my broken brain. I'm so sorry. I couldn't be the handsome, smart son who made you proud at church. Dad, thank you for paying for the imported pills. I know they cost $1,000 a bottle. I know you delayed your retirement and worked the overtime shifts at the warehouse just so I could sit in Dr. Morrison's office and stare at the wall. Please take the money in the tea tin. Use it to fix the suspension on your truck, and please stop working night shifts. Your knees can't take it anymore. Jessie, my brilliant, beautiful sister. You were supposed to go to Columbia. You had the scholarship. You had the whole world waiting for you, and instead, you spent your 20s driving me to the emergency room when the panic got so bad my heart felt like it would explode. You never blamed me to my face, but I saw the sadness in your eyes every time. Your old college friends posted photos of their graduations and promotions. Ian is a good man. I watched him help Dad carry the heavy folding tables. Yesterday, he looks at you the way Dad used to look at Mom before I got sick. Don't spend your married life trapped in this house taking care of two broken parents and a useless brother.
Take Ian.
Buy a small house with a garden.
Live.
Mom gave me the knife today. At first, I felt a sharp pain in my chest thinking that she finally hated me as much as I hated myself. But then, as I held the metal, I realized something else. Mom was just tired. She has been carrying a dead weight for 3 years, and today, she finally set it down.
She didn't kill me.
My illness killed me a long time ago. Today, my body is just catching up to the truth. Please don't be angry with Mom. She loved me the best way she knew how until she had nothing left to give. Be free, everyone. Please be free. Jonathan. When Jessica finished reading, the silence in the bedroom was so absolute that you could hear the dust motes falling through the air. Ian sat on the floor, his head bowed, tears silently dripping off his chin onto his denim jeans. From the hallway, a soft shuffle broke the quiet. Mom stood in the doorway. She had heard every single word. Her face was unrecognizable. The tight, defensive anger that had defined her expression for the last 3 years had completely dissolved, leaving behind a raw, cavernous ruin. She looked down at the letter in Jessica's hand, then at the little metal tea tin with the banded $20 bills. Mom's voice was a whisper that sounded like tearing dry paper. He thought I set him free. She took 2 halting steps into the room and fell directly onto the brown silhouette on the carpet. She pressed her chest against the floor, wrapping her arms around the empty space where my body had laid, burying her face into the stained wool fibers. Jonathan, she wailed, a sound so primal, so shattered, that it shook the welded bars on the window. Jonathan.
No.
Mommy didn't want to be free. Mommy wanted you. I wanted you, my boy.
Come back. Please, God, take me instead. Give
me back my baby. Dad came running from the kitchen, dropping beside her, pulling her into his arms as they both collapsed over the stain, weeping together in an agony so total that even the light coming through the window seemed to dim in reverence. I hovered above them, descending slowly until my transparent arms wrapped around both their shaking backs. I know, Mom, I whispered into the crown of her head, though no sound stirred the
air.
I know you loved me. It's okay now. It doesn't hurt anymore. The funeral was held on a gray, overcast Tuesday at the municipal cemetery on the edge of town. There were no lavish floral arrangements, no large crowds. Only 12 people stood around the open grave. Mom, Dad, Jessica, Ian, Dr. Morrison, and a handful of distant relatives who kept their distance, whispering among themselves with that awkward, uncomfortable pity reserved for families touched by suicide. Mom wore the plain black dress she had bought for my grandfather's funeral 10 years ago. It hung off her now, loose and baggy on her shrunken frame. In her trembling hands, she held the little blue notebook, pressed tightly against her sternum as if it were a shield against the cold autumn wind. When the minister finished the brief committal prayer, Dad stepped forward. He didn't throw a handful of dirt into the grave. Instead, he pulled from his pocket a small plastic prescription bottle, empty, and dropped it onto the mahogany casket with a soft, hollow thud. No more pills, son, Dad whispered, his voice steadying through his tears. You're done with the medicine now. You can rest. Jessica walked up next, leaning heavily on Ian's arm. She knelt down, placing a single white rose on top of the casket, alongside the gold foil box of Belgian chocolates. I'm going to finish my degree, John, she said softly, her fingers grazing the polished wood. I'm going to do it for both of us. And every time I walk across a stage, you'll be the one holding the other half of the diploma. Mom was the last to step forward.
She didn't speak.
She simply stood at the edge of the pit, looking down into the dark earth. Slowly, deliberately, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the master key with the blue tape, the key to my soundproofed bedroom. She opened her fingers and let it fall. It landed silently on the soft dirt beside the wood. I love you, Jonathan, she murmured. Forgive your mother. As the casket was lowered into the earth, I felt a strange, profound lightness pulling at the edges of my spirit. The invisible tether that had kept me bound to the carpet, to the house, to the smell of disinfectant and blood began to gently dissolve like morning fog under the rising sun. I drifted higher, above the canopy of the bare oak trees, above the gray slate roofs of the town, looking down at the small circle of 4 people gathered around my resting place. They were broken. The scar on their family would never fully heal. The empty seat at Thanksgiving would always echo with what could have been, and the brown shadow on the bedroom floor would linger in their memories long after the carpet was ripped up and replaced. But as I watched Ian gently pull Jessica close against the chill, and as Dad wrapped his sturdy arm around Mom's fragile waist to support her walk back to the car, I saw something else amidst the ruin. They were going to survive. The bottomless pit of my medical bills was closed. The constant terror of the next locked door was gone. The welded bars on my bedroom window would be unscrewed, and for the first time in 3 years, fresh, unfiltered wind would blow through the house. My death was a tragedy born of exhaustion, but in their grief, they had finally found the truth they had buried under years of frustration. They had loved me fiercely, and I had loved them enough to let them go. I took one last breath of the autumn air, clean, crisp, and completely free of pain, and let the light carry me away.